Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Story Hour for 2026. This is our first program of the new year. I'm your host, Daniel Marcus. My absolutely fabulous co-host is Laura Blackwell, and it is Wednesday evening in California, and we are back bringing you what we like to feel is the best in spoken word speculative fiction. We have work from all across the huge tent of speculative fiction, horror, fantasy, hard SF, space opera, your favorite species of punk, slipstream, weird, dark, etc. And we also welcome new writers and veteran writers and really everybody in between. Uh, so uh, it's really all about the writers and all about you folks out there. So I started this thing over 5 years ago. It was in the very early days of the pandemic, and I wanted to just create a place where my writer friends and I could get together and share our work and share a little sense of community in a pretty strange time. Um, Not like now. Um, so, we're still here, and things are still strange, but I think we need stories more than ever, and we need community more than ever. So this still is kind of a way to shelter in place briefly against the chaos out there. Very shortly after I kicked it off, I asked my friend Laura Blackwell to join me as co-host, and we have been at it ever since. 5 years nonstop, except for a brief break, Christmas and New Year's, and every now and then for other reasons. So we're not going anywhere. Story Hour is pretty simple, and it's a very old tradition, and it's folks sitting around the fire telling lies. And every week we continue this practice. We have two writers, about 30 minutes each, narrating their own work. And before we get on with the program, we'd like to thank SIFWA for their very generous grant, which helps us keep the lights on and keep these virtual rooms open. So thank you, SIFWA. Um, and with that, I am so excited to welcome our first authors of 2026, my friends Nisi Shawl and Eileen Gunn. Um, we're going to start the program with Eileen Gunn. Eileen is the author of three collections of short fiction. Her most recent book, Night Shift, is a collection of stories and essays, and it's part of PM Press's excellent Outspoken Authors series. Um, Nisi also, if I'm not mistaken, has a volume in that series. This came out in 2023. It was shortlisted for the Locus Award that year. Eileen's work has received the Nebula Award in the US and the Sense of Gender Award in Japan, been nominated for the Hugo, Nebula, and Philip K. Dick Locus and Tiptree Awards. Eileen Gunn was editor and publisher of the pioneering webzine The Infinite Matrix and served for 22 years on the board of directors of the Clarion West Writers Workshop. Since 2008, she has served on the board of the Locus Foundation. So, Eileen, welcome back to Story Hour. It's really great to have you here. Take it away.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, it's just super, super to be here. I looked up. I can't believe it's been so long. It feels like it was just yesterday. And you've got so many wonderful people. This is a wonderful show.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to read two short pieces instead of one long piece. Um, and the the first thing I'll read will be Speak Geek, which was in my second short story collection, and I don't think I've read it aloud in a long time. It was published in Science magazine, I believe, in the British Science magazine. Um, they still publish one short story, I think, an issue. People call me a nerd, but I say I'm a geek. In my youth, I ran wild on a farm and bit the heads off chickens. This was before the big tweak, back when a chicken was dinner and a dog was man's best friend. They call me a mutt, too. Sure, I'm a mutt. Mutt is good. Mutt is recombinant dog. And I'm a smart mutt. I was smart before they tweaked me, and I'm a hell of a lot smarter now. I've watched untweaked bitches, pardon the expression, trot by on leashes. I don't envy them. I don't even want to breed with them. And yes, I am quite intact, not that you were asking. Their days are filled with grooming and fetching and the mutual adoration that comes with being someone's trophy pet. I have a second life, a life of the mind beside which there's pales. Not that I take credit for my enhancements. Didn't get a choice. But gene engineering is inherently fascinating. Massively multiplayer, fraught with end of life as we know it threats. It made me who I am. I've chosen it for my career. Working at the Lazy M is the job of a lifetime. Loyalty is a big thing here, and you better believe I deliver. I love this place so much that I don't want to go home at night. There's free kibble and a never emptied water dish right outside my kennel. Did I tell you we each get our own private kennel? Except for the contractors, of course. I understand my place in the corporate structure and my importance to the man update. There's always more code in the genome, always something to snip or interpolate. That's why I was there in the middle of the night, the last round of corrections before the code freeze on Man 2.1. I was taking a good long slurp of water when I noticed the cats. They weren't making a big deal of it, just quietly going about their business. But there were cats in all the cubicles, in the exec offices, in the conference rooms. It looked like they were running a whole separate company in the middle of the night. Who hired them? HR doesn't hire cats for R&D. They're not task-oriented or good at working within a hierarchy. They sleep all day. Better suited to industrial espionage, really. Back on the farm, I was a watchdog, and I've still got a bit of that energy. Better keep an eye out, I think. So I'm lying there in the doorway to my office, nose on my paws like I'm taking a break, when the alpha cat comes by. Big, muscular Siamese mix. His flea collar says Dominic in red letters. Hey, Dominic, I call. I feel like a character in The Sopranos. You ever see that show? No dogs to speak of, but lots of food. Great food show. The cat stops, stares. You talking to me? What's the story here, Dominic? No business of yours. He narrows his weird cat eyes, then yawns ostentatiously. He turns away, shows me his butt, and walks slowly off, his loose belly fur swaying. I notice that his ears are facing backwards, in case I rush him. He's not as nonchalant as he appears. Detective work is needed. I go down to the cafeteria, keeping my eyes open en route. Funny thing, I notice there are cats in and out of Susan Gossman's office like she had a catnip rug. Gossman. Seen her in the hallways. We'd never spoken. More of a cat person. I slip a few bucks in a vending machine for one of those big leather bones. I chew. When I get back to my office, a savvy-looking brunette in a well-cut suit is sitting in a corner of the desk. Gossman. You're wondering about the cats, she says. I wave my tail a bit. Not a wag, but it says I'm paying attention. Her hair has copper highlights. Or maybe she put drugs in my water dish. Project Felix, she says, is an undocumented feature of the new Man release. Undocumented is right, I say. You're doing some kind of super tweaking with the human cat cameras, aren't you? And I don't think it's for Man 2.1. Chimeric DNA ripping through the wild? Influenza vector? You're a smart pup, she says. My hackles raise. Does Satya know what you're doing? Down, boy, says Gossman. Instinctively, I sit back on my haunches. Satya will find out soon enough. This is all for the better. Infected humans and dogs, too, will be smart and independent. The rest will just keep right on dipping seafood feast into plastic bowls. Woof! That's straightforward. She looks at me speculatively. Right now, we need a top-flight coder. I'm alert. My nose is quivering. but Gossman is relaxed. Everybody knows dogs are the best. But as a dog, she says, you have some loyalty issues, am I right? I just stare at her. Loyalty is a gift freely given, says Gossman. I give a half-hearted wag of my tail. Not for dogs, I think. But not for dogs, says Gossman. Wouldn't you like the freedom to make your own decisions? A whiff of feline flu could make all the difference. She pulls a tiny aerosol can out of her purse. I've got reflexes humans can't compete with. I could have it out of her hand in a split second. But do I owe my loyalty to the company or to the great web of which all dogs, cats, and humans are a part? She sprays. I breathe deep. She's right. Dogs are the best coders. The end. That story, if I can put in a little interpolation, was written for donations to uh, I can't remember what, Clarion, probably Clarion West. And it was people donated a certain amount of money and they got their name or their cat's name in the story. So the dog is my own character, but the cat, Dominic, was a cat I personally knew. And the KG Gossman was also a person who was a donor and a friend of Clarion West. So this next story is the same kind of story, and probably also for a Clarion West donator. And I need to locate the story. Okay. And the donors for this story was somebody else who wanted his cat in it, and my friend Bob White, who is here with us, Professor Bob. And I think you'll learn as much as you need to know about both Bob and the cat from the story. And this is Bob is the co-writer of this story. We didn't so much as write it together as we wrote it serially. And I think you can tell me whether you think it works or not. The title is The Story So Far by Eileen Gunn and Bob White. 1. The Green Room. When Bob awoke, he was still in the green room, a dismal place with pale green walls and a linoleum floor with a pattern that looked like confetti vomit. Along the periphery of the room, bolted to the floor, were uncomfortable molded seats of orange plastic, like dreadful little people cups. A tired old guy with a string mop wiped down the floor near the men's room, and a few disreputable characters dozed in the seats. How long had he been here? It seemed like years. He looked around. Was the cat, Otto, still there? He checked every chair. No cat. He groaned. Oh no. But, oh, there he was, on top of the phantom machine. Phew. Bob dreaded waking up one day and discovering that big orange Tom was gone. Not that Otto was such a great companion, but if the cat got a gig and he didn't, the green room would really be intolerable. Otto was only the beginning of his worries, though. What about the story? He didn't have stage fright, he was sure. He never had stage fright. He was what he was, a tall man with a Gandalf beard and a devil-may-care attitude. But what kind of stories were there for filmmakers who looked like Gandalf and dressed like Dumbledore? Of course, it was probably just a walk-on, no big deal, maybe a few lines of dialogue. Nobody needed to know he was a filmmaker or even that he was the most cliché-haunted character, a university professor. Perhaps in this story, he would be a starship captain. In your dreams, Bob, he thought. Maybe he would be a cat, and maybe Otto would be a starship captain. My only line would be, meow. That's just the sort of thing that would amuse the author. No, 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 she wouldn't do that to me. Eileen wouldn't do that. 2. The writer's desk. 2 o'clock in the morning. The dishes were done, the furniture was dusted, the rugs were beaten. It was too dark to wash the windows. Time to write. The writer had mapped the story in her head the night before. The plot was perfect, scientifically plausible, well-paced, and taut as a strung bow. But she hadn't written anything down, and now she couldn't remember where she was going with it. The technology was wonky, and the whole thing now seemed murky and ill-conceived. She had the characters, Otto and Bob. She could see Otto pretty clearly, a macho bruiser, burly with an orange beard, German football muscle, the kind of guy who pushes the door open with his shoulder when he enters a room, super confident, can fall asleep anywhere. That would do for Otto. You could drop him into pretty much any story, and he would make sense. But what about Bob White? Should he wear his Dumbledore robe? Nah. Surely his students would recognize him, but more conventional readers wouldn't get the joke. They'd expect a fantasy, something with sparkly unicorns and unpredictable magic spells. Got to move against the cliches here, Gunn. Well, could he be a starship captain? In a story about asteroid mining that was due a month ago? Really? I don't think so. He can't be an asteroid miner either. Though maybe if he was an AI? Nope, nope, nope. Not putting a debonair city guy like Bob out on an asteroid, even as an AI. Though that might be a job for Otto. Forget about Otto. Otto is the kind of character who can be in any story. Bob White can only be in a story that values both tradition and eccentricity. A story that respects both a chilled seafood platter and a 60-second public service spot featuring giant pink bunnies. Who could be convinced to write such a story? She hung her head in shame. She knew the answer. Part 3. The Phantom Machine. Atop the Phantom Machine, dead Otto lay dreaming, aware of everything that transpired. He was waiting for the explosion. When it came, he awoke, opened his great green eyes, and meowed. A huge fireball had erupted into the waiting room. Otto transformed instantly and leaped into action, throwing his heat-proof cape over the room's cowering inhabitants. Growing large as a woolly mammoth, he swooped up the cape full of men and carried it outside the bus station. Dumped unceremoniously by the supernatural force that had lifted them, they stood on the pavement, 5 slightly singed men, coughing and blinking and wondering what had just happened. Otto's cape conferred invisibility, at least upon him, and he looked at each of the men over in turn. 4 generic, undistinguished, slightly shabby, everyday, everyman types, and one, wait a minute, the 5th man was changing shape right before his eyes, assuming the form of, yes, the cat's nemesis, the monstrous polymath Bob White, standing there in full regalia. The man had tracked him this far, but now he appeared baffled. Perhaps the explosion had disrupted his evil train of thought. Eileen was wrong about this character. His genial wit masked the cleverest criminal mastermind. Otto gave brief consideration to the possible causes of the explosion, but when a cat is aware of all time, all that has happened, all that will happen, it becomes difficult to the causal, sort out the causality of any one event. Could Bob White himself have triggered the explosion? But why would he try to blow himself up? Incompetence in the plan of so brilliant a malfeasance seemed unlikely. No, the answer was simple. He, Otto, had dreamed the wrong story. He would try again, but the characters Bob White and Eileen Gunn were interestingly flawed. I will keep them, Otto thought. Part 4. The Unwritten Story. Sorry. I contributed to this charitable cause, and as a result, I was granted a promise that I would appear as a character in one of this author's stories. I had appeared as a character in stories before. By performing in a few movies, I had played characters, and I imagined they were me in stories, or a fictional me in stories. So now I waited to be appearing in a story. As I thought about it, being in an unwritten story was like being a character waiting. Until the story was written, the character, I, existed outside of time. Anything was possible. In my mind, a story had begun of the character in the unwritten story. So now there were two stories, waiting for the unwritten story and the unwritten story itself. As time went by, I began to be afraid. As soon as the unwritten story was written, the waiting character would cease to exist. I would die. As the story was being written, the character would begin to disappear. How might that happen? Would would I be losing memory and function? I was tempted to tell the writer about my fears. As I was the character in the unwritten story, I was infinite possibilities. Wait, have I just written a story? The end. Take a bow, Bob.
Oh, right. Well, thank you so much. God, I love your work.
Thank you.
And Bob, thank you also. Um, it's our custom here to just take a pause, take a breath, just kind of let the work we've just heard marinate a little bit before we move on. So let's do that. Well, I'm going to do that. Y'all can do whatever you like. But Eileen Gunn, folks. Thanks again, Eileen. Great to see you. Our next author is Nisi Shawl. Nisi Shawl is an African-American writer, editor, and journalist. They're best known for their science fiction, fantasy, horror, and nonfiction dealing with gender, race, and colonialism. Works, for example, like their Nebula finalist novel, Everfair. And just incidentally, if you haven't read it, you should snag a copy. It's a really terrific book. Recent editing credits include the World Fantasy Award winner New Sons, original speculative fiction by people of color. Their most recent fiction publication is the collection Making Amends, a novel in stories about an interstellar prison colony. They live in Seattle, where they take walks in the rain and feed circling flocks of crows, adding color and contrast to a fairly bland neighborhood. Nisi, take it away. Welcome. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Dang, dang. How am I supposed to? Okay. Following that act. See, this is why I wanted to be the warm-up. Okay, fine, 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 whatever. Um, all right, so first of all, I will say that this story was written for an anthology that got scrapped. The premise of the anthology was stories about Black people being happy. And this was one of the hardest stories I have ever had to write. And I can understand why the anthology was scrapped. The editor said, not enough stories, not enough material. But this is what I wrote, and it's called Kamalaughter. And yeah, I'll sing the song that goes with it. It's a song from Mama Cass's short post Mama and the Papa's uh, career. There's a new world coming, and it's just around the bend. There's a new world coming, this one's coming to an end. There's a new world coming, one that we've been dreaming of. Coming in peace, coming in joy, coming in love. Some things I remember before they happen. Usually I keep my memories quiet. Maybe I don't understand them. Maybe I don't like them. Maybe I don't want people being afraid of how my mind works, remembering what will probably be the future. So when I remembered how she laughed into that jar, I didn't tell no one. Maybe I should have. Maybe if I had told somebody then, you'd have a way to believe me and to believe what happened next. Make this easier, I'll just stick with a regular order of events. I'm going to start out by telling you what happened from when we were sitting on the balcony, which was well before me or anyone else seen what I seen. Anyways, the balcony is the nearest we got these days to a front porch, and that's where we were sitting, me and my daughter Jonine. Date was January 24, 2029. Sun just about to go down behind the real estate office, so the time was probably around 4:15. Mamala's rally started in about 2 hours, and we were resting between heading out to that one after being banned from the rally at my daughter's school. Going over the song we had rehearsed again, another one of my all your culture are belong to us picks, like when we did Blowing in the Wind. I was getting my scalp oiled. We finished practicing our singing, and Joni began talking about the nonsense one of her Indian friends, Indian like the country India, had to put up with that day because security was tight due to the visiting dignitaries. They made us all sit in the gym in bleachers. Then they weren't even going to let Geets use the bathroom in case Mr. Vance showed up early or she had smuggled a weapon in there to retrieve. Like how? And like they bound and determined his so-called election mean everybody brown want to kill him. Joni has connects to people in lots of different cultures because of her acting and directing and makeup and costuming and so forth. Same as I did her age in school, same as I still do. Theater geeks, people called us back in the day, not so long ago. We had nowhere near the shiny rep then we have now. Everybody want to be part of our flash. Joni chooses her accent like me too, putting on the Ritz, extending her verbal pinky. So Geets asked if she could be excused if security went along with her, and they finally allowed her not to piss her pants. Joni's fingers had quit moving. I reached up and felt my parts, nice and smooth and no dry spots. Stood up and took my cane from where I had rested it against the building's brick wall, polished driftwood and carved with prayers for my healing. Maybe those prayers working, 'cause I walk with that cane almost as good as any other woman of 35. Let's ride. Seattle public transit has actually improved the last few years despite takebacks of a bunch of federal grants. States' rights ain't just for coochie controlling anymore. Supreme Court ruled that King County residents' mobility must be supported in the manner to which they were accustomed. So we only had to wait 5 minutes for the bus, another 5 where it left us off to catch the train to the airport. Lots of folks waiting with us, including a group of Joni's stagiest friends. They kept her busy talking about Vance's rally, the compulsory one everyone was supposed to attend, so the school maintained its license. Which, being among the last class marched over to the gymnasium, lots of them had been let in despite being on the same watch list as Jonine, what we call paper in the house when we want to pump up attendance numbers. But as T. Pierre announced in his loudest voice, he will be surprised, big surprise, seeing so few of us remain in the seats where they put us in. How we could march ourselves off since the school day is officially over. T. Pierre flaunting his Creole accent like it was an accessory bright as his head wrap, as if nobody hadn't ever heard him perform Romeo in drag. He drew his wide shoulders up ear high, pooched his lips, then said, "What can the man do? It is his own people's fault for making his rally run the same time as Mamala's. You feel bad for him? You can just go back." Joni nodded at the crosswalk to the stop for the train going the opposite direction. But our train was coming into view around the curve. And anyway, by this time, anybody wanting to support Vance's claim he won the presidency was either in the gym or lining up outside it, getting searched. More of us than them, of course. The cars all looked pretty full, but we smooshed on in one. Only 6 stops to SeaTac's parking structure. Not a lot of time, but I still tried for the fold-down bench halfway along the car. Right before I reached it, someone, didn't see who, hinged the seat back up flush against the wall. More room to stand in, for which I heard a couple thanks. No place for me to sit. I did my best to see could I spot somewhere else. That's when I first noticed it, the jar, and her. It was an old lady carrying the jar in question. Both the jar and the lady fascinated me. She was seated and she had the jar in a basket on her lap, smiling up at the tall dude who had obviously give up his seat to her. He was smiling too. Why? The jar looked empty. Green glass with a swirly golden green glass stopper and like a necklace of tiny golden beads dangling from its top. I had been working my way nearer without realizing it. Now the doors to the next car forward shot apart, and people pressed me out of their way to come through, which naturally there was nowhere for me to move to, and I wound up bent over the old lady like a half-wilted tulip. I apologized, but she didn't act bothered in the least. In fact, she patted the arm of the man next to her, and he jumped up to vacate what became my seat. Then she reached out her same hand to shake mine and introduce herself. "How do? My name's Chrissy McLaren. Most folks call me Red." She shook the curls of her redhead wig to show why. I could tell she knew that I knew it wasn't natural and didn't care. And that tickled me. "My name's Smilla Flack. And this here is my daughter." I twisted around to introduce Joni, but the same crowd that had thrown me practically in Mix McLaren's arms had pushed her and T. Pierre and them way down to the car's far end. Joni saw me looking and waved. "That there's my daughter Jonine and a few of her friends." "You headed to my girls' rally?" I turned back. "Wait, you're Mamala's mother?" Her laugh like to crack the windows. "Ha ha, no, honey, but she's my girl all the same." Since I have decided to do this in chronological order, here comes the hard part, the part where I remembered the future. Still ain't figured out the trigger. Maybe this time proximity to the magic the lady be carrying? Sitting there right next to Mix McLaren when I had to put out my hand to catch myself because the seat vanished. Everything vanished. What I saw instead was what I saw later, walkways and elevators and us on them and the lady's jar and Mamala laughing into the jar and then us singing and swinging and getting merry like Christmas. I came out of my vision clutching Mix McLaren's basket like it was realer than real. She was finishing saying something. I couldn't replay exactly what because all I heard was the last few words. "Happiness is contagious, yeah?" I inclined my head so I could have been nodding if that was the right answer. The train stopped so more riders could try getting on. I guess some of them must have made it. Mix McLaren huddled up closer to me than was strictly necessary. Pay attention while I drop some real knowledge on you. You voted, sure, right? I nodded yes. She nodded too. Her curls bounced. And it was for her. Otherwise, you wouldn't be attending her rally, right? So why? Why'd you turn down the GOP's guarantee of giving you a black job? Because you have something better in mind. And I know the one who put that idea of something better in there, named Kwesi Johnson. She leaned back and nodded again hard. And I'm who got Mamala to get him. So you are here because of me. Well, now, that's kind of a bold assertion. True, though. No, don't be shaking your head at me. I didn't shake my head. But you thought about doing it. Don't deny. I'm not denying. Because denying such a thing would have been disrespectful and contrary to the way I was raised, and also because I actually had been thinking about doing that and then deciding I better not. Mm-hmm. She made a face like she was playing mad at me, but only like she was playing. And then that laugh again, so loud. Ah! Suddenly I realized the train had been stopped too long for simply loading on new passengers. Were we there yet? Had we stopped before and I missed it happening somehow? Maybe during my remembering? No, the station outside the window was wrong for the airport. But people were getting off anyway. I saw them streaming past, and the aisle crowd was getting thinner and thinner. I could see easy how Joni was hurrying toward my seat, forcing herself against the flow of everyone heading more sensibly to the doors she was walking away from. What's going on? I asked Joni. Two men in yellow and orange vests appeared behind her. One beckoned us toward them, and the other gestured us away like he was shooing off a cat. Joni reached where Mix McLaren and I were still sitting and tugged me up by my cane arm to hustle me forward. It's another terror alert. Everybody got to leave for them to search. They want to search the train, or they want to search us and our packages. I turned around to wait for Mix McLaren to join us, but her seat was already empty. She and her basket were already gone, escorted back the way Joni had come. The station's platform was full of passengers. Took me a second to catch on to how things was organized. Groups of paid and volunteer vest wearers stood at the bottom of the stairs and escalators running up to street level, patting people down. Some people I recognized, and going through their packs and purses and so on. 3 or more of them in each group, and they was proceeding fairly fast since most of us had left most of our belongings at home. You don't have to bring much to a rally. Steady movement from the train's 6 exits to the crews checking us. And all the movement was headed one way. Nobody was coming back to get on board again. I could see more vests blocking the train's exits, so presumably they were searching in there as well. Nobody was standing around waiting for the searchers to get finished and they could get back on. Nobody was coming down past the yellow and orange barricades at the top either. 4th terror alert this year so far, and even us in the opposition were getting used to how to behave. No panic, no busting apart into charging mobs, just a nice, orderly procession transpiring, which me and Joni became part of, floating up the escalator along with all the other would-be rally goers. It's a high ride, 2.5 stories tall. I took advantage of my vantage point to scan behind and below me. More folks who had been in touch, promising online to come celebrate, pledging to help us ratify our hard-won happiness with the flash. No sign of Miss McLaren, though, not till I emerged onto the sidewalk, and there she was. How had she got so far ahead of me? Smilla, Joni! She was shouting at us with her hands holding open the doors of a bus pulled up to the corner. Get in here, plenty of room, plenty of time. It was the airport rapid ride. Now I was the one pulling at Joni. Slow down, Mama, she complained. Are you sure we can fit on there? Come on, girl. That was T. Pierre's voice. He stuck his multicolored head out above Mix McLaren's. You better not make us miss 1 minute. So we climbed aboard the bus, right as Mix McLaren climbed off it. What was she doing? Where was she going? I leaned between two more people getting on and saw her look booking it back up the sidewalk to the station, dodging folks, leaving, dashing inside the doorway. Why? Another mystery. Driver shut the doors and pulled us smooth into traffic, which was so thick we were still stuck waiting at the light when the next bus arrived, which was also an airport rapid ride. And another of them came right after that. Sometimes they stack up together like that when one runs late. Finally, our bus started creeping across the intersection. Nobody offered me a seat. I ain't old, and I guess they thought my cane was a fashion statement. Only took us 30-some minutes to reach the parking structure anyway, once we broke free from that traffic tangle, because we were too full to let in any more people, so we blew past the rest of the bus stops on our way. Joni and I disembarked and went to find the elevator. Pretty easy, actually, since it looked identical to when I had seen it in my remembering vision a minute ago. Plus, there was this cluster of sharp-eyed security types gathered around it. While we were receiving our second pat down of the day, Mix McLaren came up for her turn. They wanted to confiscate the jar, but she showed them it was empty by putting her hand in it, turning it upside down, and she dropped it on the concrete, and that finally seemed to convince them to do otherwise when it didn't break. Maybe it was actually plastic. If it couldn't break, couldn't be turned into a weapon. Plus, for an elder, she could really flirt. A couple of the securities seemed like they thought she was cute, so she got herded onto the elevator with us for the next trip. She looked at us sly out of the corners of her eyes, and her cheeks dimpled up, but she didn't say nothing. Rally was being held on the parking structure's rooftop. It's the second biggest parking structure in the world, so not a bad idea. This particular elevator only went up 4 floors, though. We got off, took the bridge over International Boulevard, made a zig left, a zag right, and then we were right where the train would have taken us if they didn't stop it running. From there, these waist-high poles strung with silky ropes guided us toward the next bank of elevators. Every detail, same as I remembered here, too. We reached where them ropes cut us off from the rest of the walkway. I had been feeling that way a lot lately, constricted, cut off. Starting weeks before his fake inauguration, even, that monkey Vance was issuing executive orders wiping out freedoms in 5 dimensions, rescinding student loans, and canceling my theater troupe from his NEA's cross-country promotion. That was just going to be the beginning of the end. Worse than Trump, too, it was sounding. Without us having access anymore to the librarians and filmmakers and stand-ups who had got us through to the election. Losing all that. Our access to the terminal was gone, too. It was only this low-ceilinged, white-painted place between elevators we could get to so far. Place was packed full of strangers. Joni and I got separated. I watched her be herded onto elevator 4 and ride up ahead of me. Mix McLaren had hooked one hand onto me, and she tugged me backwards, away from those elevators, back towards the roped-off walkway. Parking structures always give me a spooky vibe, dark shadows and cold smells, and you can tell they ain't designed for human comfort. Somebody, probably the Secret Service, had got people's cars removed and kept out, which didn't help, just made bigger echoes. Another rope appeared in front of another group of elevators. These would be the ones reserved for Mamala's entourage. A pair of solid-looking people of pallor stood guard over them. One of the pair came forward to ask Miss McLaren what up. I couldn't hear nothing of what she whispered in his ear or see what was on the white plastic card she shown him, but he grinned and unhooked the rope and waved us on. Other guard rode up with us, kept the doors open button pressed down for us as we walked out, blushing the whole time. The rally's organizers had erected a speaker platform, sheets of particle board on a pipe scaffold maybe. Struck me as something quick and cheap like that, but around its back and sides they had raised panels of nice, thick, bulletproof-looking plexi, practically invisible where it didn't reflect the lights. As we got closer, I could make out how it even extended into like an awning, lights running along its edge and also along what you would call the front of the stage, what we call the foot. Details all familiar from my memory of the future, now the present. You're cleared to meet up with her in the green room, straight ahead. The guard let go of the button and pointed at the swiggity little trailer, or RV. Whichever it was, it had pretty silver walls with round windows in them like a boat or a plane. When I got near enough, I could see through the windshield that it had its own steering wheel. The, I guess, RV's door swung open. Way it was angled, I couldn't tell who held it, but Mix McLaren handed up her basket and climbed a couple steps. Just as she was about to head out of my sight, she beckoned me to join her. Hurry up, we don't want to let out all the good air. That laugh again. Inside was all done up in custom wood paneling, glowing with light reflected from lanterns set on the tables and countertop. Mamala herself was stood by the countertop in a plum-color pantsuit, leaning relaxed on one elbow and looking well pleased with the whole wide world. And why shouldn't she? She was now the most powerful politician on the North American continent. Someone would have said the most powerful politician on the planet. Though some would have said something else, would have named her a liar and a cheat. Is this your friend? Mamala tilted her head and held out her hand. I took and shook it. She surely is my friend. Right there and then, I was ready to swear eternal gratitude because we had only met maybe an hour ago. And here was Mix McLaren introducing me to the freaking Peotis, introducing me as her friend. I restrained myself the best I could from fangirling to Mamala's face. I accepted the coconut water one of her helpers offered me and scooted a stool up to the countertop where my new best friend was urging me to come to. Smilla, meet the dude I told you about on the train, the man who made up them counter disinformation things. Mix McLaren was pointing her head at a young man a tiny bit older than Joni, like college age, who wore a slightly sweaty smelling black t-shirt. Here he is, none other than the genius of justice, Kwesi Washington. Hey, Kwesi ducked his chin to his chest. Maybe all geniuses is shy. The report you wanted. He rolled out a big paper spreadsheet. Mamala and Mix McLaren bent their heads to study it. I looked too. Thing was fancy. Lines printed in red, orange, purple, blue, gray, gold, the meaning of which I had apparently missed out on while in the throes of that remembering. A medium brown finger tapped a row of red writing. First rumors still growing. That was Mamala talking. Not as fast as it was before, but it's doing fine. The red roast first cell said, Couchfucker Redux. Cells to the right of it went 20K, 25K, 28K, numbers getting higher bit by bit. Cell below that said AI script in orange. Below that was penis pump fire, purple. Mamala sparkled her eyes at Mix McLaren and me, then reached over the counter and bumped fists with the t-shirt man. Way to go, Kwesi! My puzzlement was showing. You understand what we've been doing, right? Mix McLaren asked me. Like I explained before, counter disinfo is a kind of propaganda. Search on it if you don't believe what I'm saying. And I did search on it. I searched on it right immediately. According to my phone, counter disinformation was real. Or sort of real. Real lies. That means you the ones behind them rumors? Mix McLaren lifted up her basket from the linoleum. Like I said, okay. I admit, it ain't rocket science, ain't magic either. Won us the election, but it ain't powerful enough so it lets us keep what we won. But this, holding up the empty jar, this is powerful enough. This is. She pulled out the jar's stopper. Yeah, it's empty at the moment, but we can change that. Watch. She held it up, recited the latest tale of the penis pump fire. Girl! Mamala laughed and laughed and laughed, and it was like everything all slid together this time. Nothing slipped away, nothing disappeared. The vision was real, the future was now. Mix McLaren gave Mamala the jar, and Mamala's laugh went into it, turning soft as a faraway wind, a wind blowing deeper than I would have thought there was room for it to go. Proven what, though? Nothing I knew about. Nothing to yank me free of my skepticism. Laughter died down. Stopper went back in the bottle. I shook my head. Matched up feeling faded away. Knock sounded on the green room door. Showtime for Mamala. She and her helpers headed for the stage. I stepped out in their wake, though I expected when we reached the steps to the stage, I would have to veer off a little in a different direction into the audience. The plan had been to stand up singing from wherever we got seated. And why not stick to what we decided, divided or not? We were supposed to go soon as the music playing loud behind Mamala's entry stopped. I stood watching her mount the stairs like a prize fighter climbing to the ring, dancing to that ragtimey piano jazz she uses, and then something behind me went ching, ching, ching. What? How could I hear that? Turned around to figure this out. It was Mix McLaren pulling that golden necklace off of her jar, looked up at me and shouted, "Hit it!" telling me to start our flash as if she was the director. But the music had died down. Mix McLaren had dropped the cue with expert timing. We had that pause, those microseconds, right before Mamala's first words, that silent gap. My Jonine's alto filled it up. There's a new world coming, and it's just around the bend. Singing soft and solid as pound cake, smooth as honey, low and firm and sure as the cement under her feet. Here come another and another and another joining in, and on stage Mamala began bouncing to the beat, and then come my turn. There's a brand new morning rising clear and sweet and free. Now the whole impromptu choir rang out, harmonies and descants, theater friends and their friends too, and strangers off the internet. Some taking the trumpet parts or strings, some chiming in high like bells, some humming deep and steady so the entire audience could hum along. Or maybe they would rather sway and rock with the rhythm and swirl us all into surge after surge of sweet, sweet music. Wave after wave of winning, triumph, hands holding up one another, arms twining over my head. I turned and Mix McLaren right there behind me, shaking her blue jar like a gourd, popping its top. And like a shook can of Coke, Mamala's laughter came pouring out, amplified somehow, bubbling over and spilling into our happiness, wider and wider and wider, into the night, into me, into us. And then all the thens. You know, you remember them now in the past like I did when they was in the future. Happiness going into the jar and happiness plus pouring out. White House steps and beyond, our world now. Same as the way we sang it. Coming in peace, coming in joy, coming in love. That's it.
Oh man. Thank you so much, Nisi. Especially today.
Right?
Oh, Nisi Shawl, everybody, and Eileen Gunn, thank you both for helping us usher in Story Hour for 2026. Um, oh man.
Thank you, Dan.
And thank you all for coming back. Uh, we hope you'll continue to do so next week. We have James L. Sutter and a special mystery guest. So please come on back then. I want to thank our authors once again, Eileen Gunn and Nisi Shawl. It's really wonderful to see you both and to hear your work. I really needed to hear work by Nisi Shawl and Eileen Gunn today. So, so thanks, guys. Um,
Did you guys know that we're related?
We're related? We're
We're
all
sis
related?
Aren't we? We're sisters.
Yeah.
oh,
You didn't know that, did you, Dan?
well, I knew you were like sisters, but you know, anyway. I also want to thank my co-host, Laura Blackwell, who I think had some technological mishap just a couple of moments ago, so I don't think she's in the room at
Oh,
the
Laura's
moment.
back.
Oh, she is great. Hey, Laura. Um, so that's it for tonight, and we'll see you all next time. Good night, everybody.
Thanks.
Good
Thanks
night.
for
Thank
having
you.
us, Dan.